So this just happened. A federal judge just telegraphed the timeline and tactics for Detroit police by ordering that they cannot use tear gas or batons when dealing with protesters for the next 2 weeks. But hey, what can go wrong? I mean, it's not like we have not seen this style of simpering leadership in Detroit before. Hello, my name is Kyle and welcome to the channel. This is The Conservative Take, where we take culture, TV, movies, and politics and filter to you the right way. If this is your first time here, please consider hitting that like and subscribe button and that bell icon so you don't miss any future content. Okay, so now in this video, I'm going to talk to you about a video that Thomas Sowell did a few years ago, and it's about riots. And I'm going to talk over his commentary because he does a way better job than I will ever probably do. And so in this video, he talks about riots. He talks about how they start, how they can be ended pretty quickly, how the left manipulates whatever happens out of the riot to their own benefit, and also what a community looks like before a riot a lot of times, but what it definitely looks like after a riot hits a community. Okay, so to kick it off, Thomas Sowell is referring to his book, which is Economic Facts and Fallacies. He contrasts the 67 riots of Detroit and the 68 riots of Chicago. Take a look at what he says about this.
The biggest riots in terms of deaths occurred in Detroit. And the governor sent in troops, but he sent them with strict orders to hold off and so on. And once the rioters, who were just a small percentage of the population of the black community, once they saw that the police weren't going to do anything, they ran amok. I contrast that with Chicago, where I still remember the original Mayor Daley coming on television and saying,
"To shoot to kill any arsonist or anyone with a Molotov cocktail in their hand in Chicago, to fire a building because they're potential murderers."
I have instructed my police in case of riots to shoot to kill. There was horror across the country. People didn't notice that there were far fewer deaths in Chicago than there were in places where the mayor came on and pleaded with people to behave and said, "I understand your problems," and all of that kind of stuff, none of which stops riots.
So did you hear that in Detroit in 67, the mayor basically held off and said, well, look, we're not going to mess with the protesters. We're going to be hands off and we're not going to mess with it. And see, if we see here in this particular article that I just mentioned, it says a late Friday ruling granted a temporary restraining order to the activist group Detroit Will Breathe, which sued the city on Monday, claiming that excessive police force infringed upon their protesters' First Amendment rights, the Detroit Free Press reported. U.S. District Court Judge Lori Mickelson ordered to stop police from using any type of force during protests without probable cause. Well, I like the probable cause, but we'll see how that goes. But we see that in Detroit in 67 that it didn't work. Being passive towards the protesters or the rioters caused way more damage and way more death. And you contrast that to Chicago a year later, you saw the clip there with Mayor Daley saying, look, shoot to kill looters, shoot to kill rioters if they're trying to destroy property. And guess what happened? It pretty much ended the riot immediately. So what Thomas Sowell was saying, to end the riot, you have to use excessive presence of force. That will end the riot. So in this clip, you'll see the Portland mayor being booed, and you'll see the Minneapolis mayor being kicked out of a rally because neither one of them would defund the police. So we can see that the crowd doesn't want to be appeased, and that is what Thomas Sowell is referring to. Now, in terms of the Detroit riots in 67 and the Chicago riots of 68, we know the aftermath from that. But what did Detroit, who got the worst of the riots, look like prior to 67? Check this out.
Although Detroit, once again, economic facts and fallacies, although Detroit had the worst of the riots, the poverty rate among Detroit's black population was only half of that of blacks nationwide. Its homeownership rate among blacks was the highest in the country, and its unemployment rate was 3.4% lower than among whites nationwide. Detroit did not have a massive riot because it was an economic disaster area. It became an economic disaster area after the riots.
Yeah.
So again, in Thomas Sowell's book and in this particular interview, he lays out the case for Detroit. Detroit, before 1967, had a poverty rate which was half of that of black people nationwide. The home ownership was the highest in the country among black people. And check this out. The unemployment was 3.4% lower than nationwide average for white people. This was Detroit prior to the riots. So what happened? The riots essentially destroyed the community. Detroit did not become an economic disaster area because of the riots. No, it was an economic disaster area after the riots.
Once they saw that the police weren't going to do anything, they ran amok.
So look at what Thomas Sowell said, that after they knew that nothing was going to happen to them, they just ran amok. Now check out this particular clip here where he talks about how riots get started and how to effectively stop them.
What causes these riots? Once they get started, the governor does the wrong thing.
Yes.
But what starts them?
Oh, anything can start a riot. The question is, how do you stop them? And James Q. Wilson once said the only thing that will stop the riot is overwhelming force on the scene.
So he goes on to say essentially that anything can start a riot, but basically if they know that you're going to hold back the police, that's not going to help the case. And so, but the key thing he said was, how do you stop it? And to stop it, you have to have overwhelming force on the scene. Now, here's the caveat to that, and we're going to wrap this video up after this.
But you see, if you put overwhelming force on the scene, that will indeed stop the riot cold. But then the next day's newspapers will say, why did the police overreact? I mean, there was just a little disturbance, and here come these tons of cops.
Right.
So that's the rub, right? So you use overwhelming force on the scene to stop a riot, but guess what happens? The left turns around and plays victim and says, hey, it was just a few protesters. Did you need all those cops to stop it? Well, yeah, you did. And so they'll shift that blame to the police officers so they can defund the police, and the cycle continues.
Moved in on those peaceful protesters in order to enforce Washington, D.C. 7 p.m. curfew. But let me tell you what the reality was. Those U.S. Park Police, those Secret Service police moved in on those peaceful protesters a full 25 minutes before that curfew was supposed to even start. And they cleared the way. And then President Trump showed up right here for that photo op.
And I'm a little shook by the whole thing, to be completely honest with you. It was absolutely extraordinary thing to see and experience with the White House in my peripheral vision.
So what is our counter to that? Well, I'm going to say that for another video, but as a spoiler, President Trump did something today which was a huge step in that direction. All of these American cities that are failed because of their Democrat policies have been in place since the 60s, and these riots and the upheaval from that and the mismanagement of money and resources that are just being wasted and not going to where they need to go. Again, that's another video. But the big question is this: what do you think about this particular video? What do you think about Thomas Sowell? We all know he's brilliant, but I'm curious about your opinion on how he framed the riots and the statistics between Detroit and Chicago and how the communities just went downhill. And especially in Detroit's case, it was doing very, very well prior to the riots and the upheaval from that. Let me know in the comments below. I'd be curious to know what you think. And so if you like what I do on this channel, where I take culture, TV, movies, and politics, filter it to you the right way, then please click that like and subscribe button and that bell icon so you don't miss any future content. Please go to walkedaway.net to make it known when you first walked away to help support this channel. Also, check out some content that I have right here.